But before we get started, I want to just thank you for joining us today. I do want to remind everyone to please keep their microphones muted while the panelists are presenting. And additionally, we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you'd like to ask questions, please do so using the chat box at the right of the screen. I'd now like to introduce our panelists with us today. From David and Margaret Family Services, we have Marissa Schofield. She is the Compass Program Director. From Hathaway Sycamores Family Services, we have Stephanie Grijalva, CES Youth Regional Coordinator. From Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services, we will have Monica Rivas and Delilah Sandoval. From Tri-City Mental Health Services, we have Carrie Kennedy, Clinical Supervisor for Children and TAFE Full Service Partnership Programs. And from the Pomona Valley Americas Job Center, we have Irma Martinez, Youth Service Coordinator. Now I'd like to turn it over to our Congresswoman, Norma Torres.
Thanks, Daniel, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining me today for this important discussion about some of the most vulnerable members of our community, and that's transitional age foster youth. As part of today's discussion, I'd like to talk about what more can we do to improve the system, as well as resources that are available currently for foster youth during and after they transition out of foster care. Foster care is inherently a difficult experience for a child. Every child deserves to live in a protective environment that supports their growth. And being separated from one's family, no matter how great the need is, can be a traumatizing experience. Unfortunately, with the growing problem of the opioid abuse, it's an experience that thousands of individuals in our country have gone through. Currently, over 400,000 children and young adults in the US are part of the foster care system. In the city of Pomona, my home city, there are 729 children living in foster care. And that number jumps to 17,819 kids in foster care in the county of Los Angeles. Some of these children are escaping unsafe situations. Many have experienced some type of abuse or neglect. I'm sure you've heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So as community leaders, it's on us to ensure that this change does not make their lives even harder than it already is, but instead that they are entering a system that will embrace them and support them and allow them to grow into productive adults. But as any responsible parent, and for foster youth, we are their parents. Every parent knows that our job does not stop there. It continues long after they leave foster care. Too many teenagers, I must say, transition out of the foster care system without the support that they need to succeed. 1 out of every 4 foster youth exiting the system will experience homelessness within 4 years. The stakes are really high because they are more likely to abuse alcohol, use illegal drugs, or become victims of human trafficking. Truly, how we treat our foster kids impact everyone in the community. And as you're a member of Congress, I've been working to get federal resources to support programs serving youth in the foster care system as they transition out. In 2020, Congress provided $10.2 billion to foster care programs. And as a member of the Appropriations Committee, I was very proud to announce that $70,499 foster youth, $70,499 went to foster youth to Independence grant that was provided by HUD to the Housing Authority in the city of Pomona. The grant is part of a Homeless Foster Youth to Independence initiative, a program designed to deliver housing vouchers and supportive services to young people under the age of 25 with histories of involvement in the child welfare system who are currently homeless or at risk of experiencing homelessness. It is critically important to understand that while the federal government provides grant opportunities to our cities and counties, it is really up to those local governments to prioritize how the money will be spent. I'm very excited to hear from our panelists, 3 young up-and-coming women who will discuss ways they are working to support our foster youth, and want to take this opportunity to tell them to please continue to update my office on the programs that are truly delivering for our kids. I also want to encourage everyone on the call to visit my website at torres.house.gov, where you can find a variety of resources, guides, and local tools available to you if you need assistance with a federal agency, or call us at 909-481-6474. Daniel will add that to our message box to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to get that information. And as always, my office remains ready to assist you in any way that we can. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, and I look forward to an informative discussion on this critical issue. Daniel?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Now we're going to move on to our first presenter, our first panelist of the day, Marissa Schofield. She's going to give us an overview of TAY, as well as some of the services that David and Margaret provide.
Thank you so much for having me. First, a big thank you to Congresswoman Torres for her leadership in support of our most vulnerable communities. Today, we're going to be talking about our foster youth, but specifically young adults who either were in foster care as minors and those who have opted into extended foster care. So as most of you know, there's something going around right now with our young adults, average young adults, where there's sort of this like failure to launch, right? It's pretty common for between 25 to 35 where our young adults are staying in the home longer, or they're coming back into the home after they've gone and pursued school. And so think about all of those sort of barriers that inhibit their ability to launch. Now think about our young adults who experience trauma, extreme trauma as a child. Those add so many more additional barriers that cause our young adults to just experience challenges that our average young adults just don't experience. And so when we first had Assembly Bill 12 signed in 2010 and then became active in 2012, we started working with our young adults as they had the ability now to extend their foster care up until age 21. Well, what we came to learn is that they need a lot more than we thought. Yeah. We learned that we weren't doing enough. I mean, Congresswoman Torres talked about some of the statistics, and they're alarming. Our foster youth are experiencing higher rates of incarceration, homelessness, unemployment, food insecurities. They lack a high school education, and we need to do more to support them. And so when we ask ourselves these questions, we're realizing that they lack a lot of the basic skills to be successful adults because of the way that, unfortunately, they've been institutionalized. They're being raised by the system. They're coming in and out of group homes, in and out of foster homes. And so they just simply haven't had the opportunity to learn those very basic skills that we take for granted. Things like, you know, being able to do your laundry and manage your money and get your first job and things like that. Things that you would get if you had a permanent adult positive connection in your life. And our youth simply do not have access to that. And so if we can go to the PowerPoint, yes. So this is just an example of just some of the programs that we have at David and Margaret to support our young adults. And Compass Point Drop-In Center is a hub for all resource and service delivery. And this is our way of trying to address all of those disparities. And so if a young adult comes into our center and simply needs access to basic needs like a shower or clothes or hygiene products, maybe they just want to come in and chat with somebody. Maybe they want to come in, hang out, play some video games. Maybe they need services. Maybe it's access to workforce training where they get access to a career coach that they can talk to weekly. They get a paid internship. Maybe it's housing that they need. And so whether the need is transitional housing, where they would just need access to maybe basic life skills training, weekly case management, or maybe they need more. Maybe they need something like our permanent supportive housing program, where they have on-site clinical teams, our TFSP program that works alongside them where they live. And so these are just some of the examples of some of the things that we've learned that they need access to in order to be successful independent adults. And so if you go to the next slide, we actually, I know we won't have time to do that today, but maybe Daniel can give everybody access to this. We do have a video tour on our website so that you can check out the drop-in center. It's really nice when you can see what people are talking about and, you know, and see it in action. But really, these are the things that I know my colleagues are going to get into more detail about: the importance of housing, the importance of mental health services, and having access to employment development are really critical things that we need to make sure our most vulnerable young adults have access to in order to overcome the challenges that they're having to come across. So if you go to the next slide, this is just general information. If you have questions and you want to email us or call, this is the information. And then hopefully Daniel will also provide you guys access as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marissa. And I'll definitely, I'll go ahead and I'll email this information out, and as well as put it in the chat. Now we're going to hear from Stephanie from Hathaway Sycamore Family Services, and she's going to speak about housing and homeless services for Tay.
Everyone, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. So yes, I work with Hathaway Sycamore's Child Family Services as the Regional Youth Coordinator for the Youth CES, also known as the Coordinated Entry System, in conjunction with LAHSA. Now I know maybe some of you have heard about LAHSA, maybe you've heard good things or bad things, but I'll go through both. So YCES is actually really cool. It serves a spectrum of homelessness. We have prevention on one side with housing navigation, transitional housing, including ILP for our former foster youth and probation youth, and also permanent supportive housing, along with some vouchers here and there. We even have a program, diversion. It's also known as problem solving fund. So we can stop our youth from even entering the system to begin with. In addition to this, we also know that we need support on campuses, along with DCFS and probation camps. So we made two different positions called the College Peer Navigator, stationed at our community colleges, and a probation liaison. Now this was meant to cut the barrier from students who have no idea that these services are even around, that they're even there, for both colleges and DCFS is a whole different world from us, right? Probation is a whole different world from us. So we now have an expert in all three systems: DCFS, probation, and YCES. As regional coordinator, I'm actually able to bring all of the community resources, all of our community partners together twice monthly to discuss these not just resources, but also very specific cases that come up. And you wouldn't even believe some of the cases that, how vulnerable our youth may be. We do have access centers. We have one access center in SPA 3 specifically, run by Hillsides, also known as YMO, Youth Moving On. And the access centers are now a way to enter the system, to enter YCES by doing what's called the next step tool. The next step tool is known as a youth assessment. It is known as a youth survey. This is a vulnerability index. It has questions about homelessness, history of homelessness, mental health, substance abuse, everything that you can think of, and it generates an acuity score. And with that, we're able to see which program best suits the youth, whether it's minimum assistance, like rapid rehousing, or something a lot more severe, like permanent supportive housing. Now, although I can talk all day long about LAHSA and county-wide resources, I really want to focus in on SPA 3 and give you guys some numbers. For one, we have 619 total youth experiencing homelessness in the San Gabriel Valley alone. Now, if you want to go deeper, we have 109 youth in Pomona experiencing homelessness right now. With 66 of those youth have identified that they've worked with a social worker or a probation officer. Now let's go deeper into what that means. In SPA 3, we have 18 ILP resources in Alhambra. We have 10 ILP resources through Hillsides in Pasadena. And we have about 35 to 45 from Hathaway Sycamore's ILP program. It does fluctuate because we go through different SPAs as well. So that is not enough. That is not enough ILP. And let's just talk about what it means to be an ILP. ILP means that the youth, they have to know that their case has to be closed. And with COVID, the pandemic hitting, we weren't getting those cases closed fast enough. So that meant that if the social worker didn't know about this, if they didn't know how to contact our liaison, that the youth were sitting wherever it was that they were, continuing to experience homelessness, even though LA County has those, even though SPA 3 has those resources. So we're gonna move on. Oh, one more thing that I want to mention, ILP is only up until age 21. After 21, we have to exit youth, whether that means into an emergency shelter, which we don't have too much of, whether that means trying to connect them somewhere else, a different type of program, opening up their case again. So we don't have a long time frame to work with our youth. We also have transitional housing funded by Measure H. And sorry. Yeah, we have transitional housing funded by Measure H, also through Hathaway Sycamores. We have about 55 to 60 slots. Again, that does vary. And then we have permanent supportive housing, about 10 in Pasadena, 10 to 15 in Laverne with Cedar Springs. And every so often, we do get vouchers, the Family Unification Program vouchers from the different housing authorities. In addition to that, every so often we'll have tenant-based rent assistance for youth. All of these programs have criteria and verification process, which in the broad spectrum of homelessness in general is very easy to meet, but because our youth experience homelessness so very differently because of their resiliency, because the way that they will clean up, they will find someone to go home with and make sure that they're not sleeping in parks, so that they're not sleeping in their car, so they can shower sometimes. So we understand that that is definitely something that we're struggling with, and that's a system thing. And we are working with LAHSA to try to figure out how to make these programs more youth friendly. And my minute is up.
Thank you, Stephanie. And then if you could please as well enter any contact information on the side, as well as send it to me. Now I'll go ahead and send it out at the very end of the event today. Now moving on to Carrie Kennedy, or no, I'm sorry, we're moving on to Monica Rivas, and Delilah Sandoval from Los Angeles County Department of Children and Family Services.
Hi, Daniel. Hi, everyone. And I want to start by saying thank you to Congresswoman Torres for being a leader in advocating for the needs of our foster youth and foster care in general. For this is a very important need that we have been tasked to take on. I want to start by saying that, you know, I am from the Pomona DCFS office. So in terms of what Stephanie was speaking to is very true. We have 8.7% of DCFS total population of TAY youth. And out of that 8.7%, 7.5 belong to Pomona. So we do have a high number of kids, of youth in our office that we are working with very closely to ensure that they are provided with services and resources to ensure a successful emancipation from the system. I would like to highlight the PowerPoint that is focusing on the key dates in history of DCFS. The reason why I thought this was important to share was I want to be able to show the community and see, it's for all of us to see how we have evolved as a department. It seems as if, you know, the Department of Charities was formed in 1913. Although we're in 2020 now, we are really talking about the last 10 years that we've been having an emphasis and focus on supporting our transitional age youth. So it hasn't been long enough for us to really be able to, you know, see the areas that we need to continue growing on and focusing on the resources that we need. But I do think that it's important to say that our job continues to be, you know, an important one. The youth that we work with continue to have, you know, evolving needs, and part of this webinar, which really is important for us to be part of, is it allows us to share to the community and continue to speak on the matter that is not going away, right? And I think when we understand the work that we've been doing and where we're trying to go, really helps us come together to further advance the agenda for our transitional age youth. So it's been a long journey for DCFS and trying to understand, and even though it's only been within the last 10 years, I believe that we've made great strides. However, it's not enough yet. A lot of our kids, as Marissa and Stephanie have pointed out, do end up homeless or do end up incarcerated. And I think the efforts that the department has been doing with community partners is really to put a stop to that. So I do want to thank Stephanie and Marissa for being pioneers and advocating and being true champions in the community and supporting our youth. Moving on to the next slide, I would like to really focus on what extended foster care is through Assembly Bill 12. I want to say that the state of California has been a champion for our youth in pushing this Assembly Bill forward and being approved. This has really allowed for DCFS and probation to really support our youth and prevent them from ending up in the streets, challenged with mental health and drug use and like I said earlier, incarceration. So thanks to the efforts of our politicians, we are here talking about this. We are trying to continue to grow in this movement, and with the support and involvement of all our community, I know we can be very successful in it. So when we talk about who is eligible, we're really focusing on two groups. We're talking about foster youth and probation youth. From DCFS, many of our kids are dual supervision, so we will encounter a youth that transitions from our system into the probation department or vice versa. So the work that we do together is very important to ensure the success of our youth, whether it be from one department or the other. I do have a supervisor here with me, Delilah Sandoval. I do want to say that the Pomona DCFS office has been extremely intentional in creating an AB 12 unit to really support the needs of our youth and to really ensure their success throughout the emancipation process of AB 12 supervision. So I do have Delilah joining me, who will share what has been successful for our youth while emancipating through AB 12.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Okay, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties, so my video is not working, so my apologies. But Congresswoman Norma Torres, for your advocating for our youth, we really appreciate that. It makes a big difference in trying to move forward with our youth and helping them become self-sufficient. The Pomona office, like Ms. Rivas mentioned, we have a unit of 5 social workers who are specifically servicing the AB-12 population. And most recently in the last year, we're actually looking at even a little bit younger to start preparing them and really buy into another year of service. So any youth that is 17, at least 17 years old, and is considered to be in permanent placement, meaning that they're not going to go back with their relatives or a parent, we're really looking at them and trying to bring them onto my unit before they turn 18, so that we have that extra year of actually prepping them for what AB-12 really mean. And it really buys us time. And I think that that's actually been a really good step that we've taken on. My focus in working with each one of my workers is that the workers are specific, that have the skills to work with this population, that these workers care for this population, that they're dedicated to this type of work, that they're focused on what it is that they're going to be delivering to the youth. The goal is self-sufficiency. The goal is that they become independent, that they don't end up homeless, that if they ever encounter a challenge in their life after beyond, the age of 21, that they know what to do, that they know where to go, that they know who to help. So along the way, we're helping them maintain those permanent connections, whether it's a prior foster parent, whether it's a mentor from college or a best friend's parent, anybody in their life that is significant to them that they can go to when times are hard in the future. In the meantime, we're taking each youth with their own individual needs. We don't have a cookie cutter. We don't have any specific checklist that we go through. Worker has to know their client from beginning to end. And that's every time we get a new case, the worker's #1 job is to get to know Johnny Doe. Who is Johnny Doe? What does Johnny Doe need right now? What is Johnny Doe's goal 6 months? What are some of the challenges? If the youth is struggling with some physical needs, say a medical condition or anything like that, we try to focus on those immediate physical needs first, so that the youth is strong enough to move forward on whether they want to get a job, whether they want to go to college. And we definitely must partner with community resources. That's our number one goal as well, because again, we want to prep them so that when they're on their own, they know what to do when they have an issue with their bank account, when they need mental health services, when they're wondering what the next step to do while they're in college. We do have foster care specialists in the local colleges that are very, very supportive of our youth. And what I've seen that's the most successful is when the social worker goes with the youth to the college to get to know that foster care liaison, to get to know what it is that they qualify for, either through the CARES program, through the REACH program, through the EOPS program. All of that makes a big difference, because we're building confidence in our youth so that they can move forward and be independent. If they're not interested in college, okay, what would you like? What is it that you're interested in? How do we prepare you for a job interview? Even if we have to go there to their home and teach them how to dress for that job interview. That's what we're doing in Pomona. We're really taking each youth for their own needs and obviously using their strengths. Our youth have a lot of strengths, using their strengths so that they can really move forward and be successful. We have a lot of success stories and we're very proud of them.
Thank you, Delilah, for sharing that. That speaks to the work that DCFS is doing. And I think it speaks to the work that the community is also doing. So by holding webinars like this, it allows us to continue to engage the community, continue to engage each other in understanding, you know, what is it that we're trying to achieve together here? What is it that we need to ensure that our youth don't continue to be a statistic or continue to end up where they shouldn't be? And make sure that no child ever falls, no youth ever falls between the cracks, because we are all responsible for their overall well-being. And I think the department's efforts through their Invest LA initiative speaks to that, to the community cross partnerships, how this really is about DCFS aligning with the faith-based community, the nonprofit organizations, our community-based organizations, our colleges, everyone coming together to really support our youth through the process of transitioning, which is scary. I think Marissa said it best. You know, we have kids that are going back home. Well, our kids don't have that option. And if we don't prepare them, then what are we really doing with them? So again, thank you for inviting us, for allowing us to be part of this.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Delilah. And we're going to move on now to our next speaker. From Tri-City, we have Carrie Kennedy, and she is going to cover some of the mental health programs and resources that are available for TAY.
Yes, thank you so much again for having me here. Obviously, we are all so passionate about this topic and what we can all bring together to support this community. So I will try to go quickly through my slides. I won't speak to everything on them, but I just want so that we can make sure that you guys are aware of the resources that Tri-City has to offer. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So again, I'm not going to go through this slide in detail, and it is old statistics, but it does really point out the mental health disparities that foster youth, especially age out foster youth, encounter compared to the regular adult population who hasn't experienced foster care. So I think, again, it's important slide to show why we're here and why we should be talking about, especially how mental health impacts foster youth. So we can go to the next slide. I'm sure most of us know this, but most foster youth have experienced a lot of trauma and what we call adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. That's a really important thing to be aware of. So that can often lead to fear, mistrust, and a lot of things we hear from our youth when they come through our doors is feeling a loss of control or a loss of say in their own life. A lot of times people are telling them what to do or what they should be doing or how to do it, instead of asking, what do you want to do? How does this look like for you? And that can lead to a lot of anxiety and sadness around the changes, a lot of grief and loss, a lot of anxiety and guilt for maybe connecting to your foster family or not wanting to maybe see your biological family. There can be a lot of anxiety and guilt around that. A lot of loss in relationships, difficulty building new relationships, because again, trust and fear come into play there. And an important thing I want to highlight in this slide is a lot of times with foster youth, there's so much stigma because we see the behaviors. We see the substance use, we see the oppositional behavior, the defiance, and those kind of things. And we forget to look at what has happened to them and how they're getting through and what has helped them to become resilient. And so I think I'm going to talk later in regards to what resources we need, but trauma-informed care is so important, not just in mental health, but every entity that comes into interaction with foster youth. And then again, just stigma is such a big thing when it comes to especially this population and their mental health, especially when families of origin oftentimes don't acknowledge mental health or promote talking about mental health and reaching out for support. We can go to the Again, this is just an example of how sometimes we can see behaviors. One of these post-its says, I have depression and I don't want anyone at work to know. So when I started in UMed, I called out sick and said I had food poisoning. So in a foster home or with a foster youth, you have maybe post-traumatic stress or anxiety or something, or you're taking medication. And instead of telling someone that you need help or I'm on medication, you might hear them say they have food poisoning and I'm calling out. And so all we're seeing is this person is calling out sick. And so I hope that in my presentation, this will empower and encourage all of you to think of what's happening and see what's happening and how someone is getting through this rather than just the behavior of what you're seeing in front of you. Go ahead. And And again, just a reminder that adversity doesn't mean that's that's the youth's destiny. Reminding them of that, and then reminding ourselves of that as well. So Tri-City is here to help. We have a lot of resources. We do have a navigator program that's open to the community and to clients. The hotline number is there as well. They can help to find any food resources, any medical resources, legal resources, an abundance of resources they can assist with. We do have a well-being supportive chat for those in the community who may need someone to talk to for non-emergency support, and they can access that anytime during our business hours, and they can be linked with Chris Anzalone, who can provide that well-being support. We also have 24/7 crisis support services. That's for clients and non-clients. There's 2 different numbers to access, but we do have 24/7 crisis support available, where someone can be linked with a mental health provider and speak, and if they need to be linked with emergency support services like the emergency room or anything like that, they can be directed in that way. And again, just, you know, a few of our other programs, we do have a therapeutic community garden program, which has had to alter a little bit because of the pandemic, but it's still happening and it's still working. And we have found that that's been really helpful, especially with trauma. Getting your hands moving and working and touching the ground can be really grounding for someone. So we have a wellness center, which I will go into more in a little bit. We have a service learning program where people can get hands-on experience in working in public mental health. We have a peer mentor program where someone can request a peer mentor with similar demographics and maybe even lived experience, or can volunteer to become a peer mentor themselves. So we oftentimes have foster youth have aged out who want to maybe support others who have gone through the same thing, and that's an extensive training program that they can be. And we also have community mental health trainings that we offer. We have a lot of webinars right now about suicide prevention and different things like that that are available to the community. Go ahead. Again, like I mentioned, we have the Wellness Center that has open support groups for all ages, children, youth, adults, and families. They are operating virtually right now, so that we do still have access to some of those groups. This calendar that you see here is we have a specific TAY area for our wellness center that's grouped specifically for the 16 to 25-year-old population. They have foosball, they have video games there, as well as the groups that you see here. We also have groups available for non-TAYs, which include employment for all age groups, which include employment services, family support services, parenting classes, and parenting support groups. So we have an abundance of support groups available. And then just quickly to go through, Tri-City does offer formal outpatient services and full service partnership services that are more intensive field-based services. We do have crisis support. We have clinical wellness advocates who are specifically hired as having lived experience. Sorry, I put my own timer on. That have lived experience and are available to our community as well. And case management, and we also do have housing specialists that our formal services have access to as well. And then you can go to the next slide. And then for foster youth also, we specifically offer them intensive care coordination services, which include field-based, strength-based services, and quarterly children and family teaming meetings, which includes collaboration with all the people involved with this foster youth's life. And then lastly, what I specifically want to highlight in this slide about what resources we need, again, like I mentioned earlier, trauma-informed care is so huge. Offering choices and honoring a youth's voice and choice is so important, not just for mental health, but from courts, from foster families, from every entity involved in a foster youth's life. So we really encourage everyone to be informed about what trauma-informed care looks like. Continuity of care, foster youth often move, and that means changing providers and therapists, and that's obviously not helpful when you already have a hard time opening up to someone. And then just ongoing collaboration with every entity involved in a foster youth's life, but doing so in a way that honors the youth's voice and choice. Because oftentimes, again, when us, housing, DCFS, all of us are collaborating on this for the benefit of the youth, we're telling them what that should look like and doing it in a way where we're focusing on the behaviors and what's going wrong, rather than what the youth may want or what will be helpful or what's helping them at that time. So that's what I have. Thank you so much. And please reference our website for any of the other flyers or groups that we have. We have everything there as well.
Thank you, Carrie. That was very informational. I'm sorry. And I'll definitely be posting your information. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, please be sure to go ahead and use the chat box. We will have time for a Q&A at the very end. So please feel free to ask some questions. Moving on to our final panelist from Pomona Valley America Job Centers, Irma Martinez, and she's going to talk about some of the programs that they have there to help foster youth with workforce development skills. Irma, are you able to join us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm using the handset. I don't have a camera on my work computer, so we're doing this the old-fashioned way.
No worries.
So I'm part of the Los Angeles County Workforce Development for Aging and Community Services, known as WEDAX. And as you probably know, that we are funded every year to provide services and activities for youth ranging from the ages of 14 to 24. Now this year we have three tiers of services. Level 1 is primarily those youth that are in school, but they could go all the way up to age 24, depending on what their criteria for enrollment is. Now, we've been fortunate enough that the foster youth get their own stream of funding, which means that they could be eligible to receive up to 120 hours of work experience, which 20 of those hours are conducted in a workshop. And it's a traditional age world of work, which is we call TAWOW. And that during those workshops, they get financial literacy, interviewing, dress for success, budgeting, all those topics are covered. And then once they finish those 20 hours, then they could pick a work site to complete hours. We have work sites all over Pomona, and the kids, they do their 100 hours. Now the older youth, when they hit 17, if they're graduating, if they have graduated from high school, they could go into level 2. That's my level. I work with kids 17 to 24. And that criteria is 17 to 24 out of school, low income youth, which we know that if they haven't worked in 6 months, they're low income. So, and one of the I don't like using the word barrier because I just don't see it as a barrier. I think it's just a little bit of a hump in the road that they need to get, let's work through it. And it'll be parenting youth, foster youth, probation, high school dropout. The last one would be basic skills deficient. So it's a little time consuming to do the first, to start off the program. That you have to do everybody has to test in and then make sure they're registered on Cal Jobs. And then we do the same thing. We try to find a work site that best matched what their career is going to be. And they're off and running and working. I personally like to get my kids going really, really fast because some of my kids are facing homelessness, that they're doing couch surfing. They may not have enough, they're not going to have enough money to eat or whatever. So I like to get my kids going really, really quick. And we've partnered up with God's Pantry here in Pomona. And they've also, we've sent kids over there just to go get some immediate groceries, so to speak, so that way they can have something to hold them over. With us, we have some humanitarian work sites that we could fund up to 240 hours. And I neglected to say, both level 1 and level 2, our youth are getting paid $15 an hour, which is pretty good. And then if they decide that, that they're not going to go to college, and maybe they want to do some kind of occupational training, they can move up to level 3 if they're 18 and over. Level 3 is the adult program, and that's where the money for training is at. So they could get training. Right now we have a couple of online CNA classes, which I'm kind of eager to see how they're gonna do. But that's been one of our successful occupations that our youth have been really good at. As a matter of fact, I just heard from one of my kids from a couple of years ago. She's still working as a CNA and has gotten promoted within the hospital that she's at. So that's kind of like one of my little success stories. And then on top of all that, we've also have another program in-house that is the Bridge to Work Foster. And this, I think, is funded through the DPSS. And from what I understand is that the youth need to be 16 to 20. And this program is 400 hours. So it's like a win-win and a win. So our youth can't, and I have seen the changes in kids once they start seeing that they could actually earn money and see that they are, I think it empowers them a little bit to say, okay, I could pay I could pay for my own phone, I could buy myself some of my own clothes. And just to give you a success story from a couple of years back, I had a youth that was a foster, was homeless, and he wanted to do a CNA program. And he kept saying, Miss Martinez, I could do it, but I need to work at the same time. And I have never done that before, where I put a youth in training and turn around and put them in work experience at the same time. But I put him really close between the school and the work site, so he wouldn't have to travel far. I go, if you start messing up, we're gonna have to quit working, because getting your license is most important. Well, so it so happened that his girlfriend helped him rent a room in somebody else's home. He completed the CNA training and did really well with the work experience. As a matter of fact, they wanted to hire him. But then he got a job as a CNA, and when he came back to give me a copy of his first paycheck, the look on his face from the time that I met him to the time that he got his first check, his face was completely different. His expression, his everything, the way he spoke, the way he held himself, that was my first tearjerker. So I always tell my kids, make me cry and you doesn't well. So we have a lot of services here in Pomona, and not only in Pomona. I want you guys to know that the AJCCs, there's about 8 or 12, maybe even more, around LA County that should have youth programs, and then they should be able to assist our kids.
All right, thank you, Irma.
Okay, I'm going to add one more thing. We have flyers available, and I also have, so if you guys want, I'll put my email on the chat, and if you want to send me an email, I could send you all the flyers, so that way you could see if you could send your kids to get some hours over here.
All right, thank you, Irma.
Thank you again.
Thank you for all that information. If you have a question, I had mistakenly said put it in the chat. There's actually a button, there's a Q&A button at the very bottom of the screen that you can actually ask questions. And we do actually have our first question. And this is going to be for Marissa. Are some programs for Compass being held virtually? If so, what does that look like?
So all of our programming is actually available virtually. And so we offer all of our life skills training, workforce training, case management, all via Zoom. However, throughout this pandemic, we continue to also provide face-to-face support. We understood that the need was even greater during COVID. And so even though COVID presented with some limitations, we figured out ways around it, and we continue to do that as well. And so in some ways, COVID has actually given us an opportunity to expand on the options for our young adults to obtain service delivery. And so now we have no intent to stop the virtual because to some, it's actually increased engagement. And so yes, all of our programs are available virtually.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Bill Gould. To what extent are you all collaborating with Guardian and Renaissance Scholars programs?
I could probably speak to that. So as part of our workforce training program, we have employment education specialists who work directly with the Guardian Scholars program and different foster youth liaison offices like the REACH program and EOPNS. And so what we do is we connect them with the community. So it's what we've learned is it's not enough to offer services within program, but we also have to offer and connect them with their communities. And so by collaborating and connecting with the community, we're able to leverage each other's resources so that we're ensuring that our young adults have access to every opportunity that they can.
That's great. We received some emails as well in advance, so I want to go over some of those as well. And we have a question specifically for DCFS. Are there any programs within DCFS that provide better mentoring to foster youth aging out of the system?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for the question. We do have limited mentoring. However, this is an area of need, and we are working on expanding. So we do obviously solicit any opportunities for partnering with agencies or for faith-based community partners that would be interested in mentoring our youth. Part of the limited mentoring that we do have is through our CASA program. However, I think Delilah spoke best to it in terms of, connections. Of what allows youth to be successful is having that connection. So if we continue to work expanding in this area by ensuring that every youth has a mentor and is connected to someone beyond DCFS is really what we're trying to achieve here. So if anyone would be interested in exploring ways, please reach out to us. We would be more than willing to. I know our youth are open to any help that we can always offer, and mentoring can look in many different ways. It could be someone that just answers the phone when somebody is trying to, is in need of speaking to someone. Mentoring can be really taking the time to teach someone how to prepare warm meals versus spending their money, out in fast food restaurants. So there's different roles of mentoring, and I think sometimes that's important to clarify. It's not necessarily taking your entire day or weekend to connect with a youth. No, it's not necessarily limited to that. There's other ways to mentor and to connect with youth. And if anybody would be interested, I would be more than gladly, as well as Delilah, to connect, because this is an area of need that we do have as a department.
Great, thank you, Monica. We have another question. This question is going to be for any of the TAY centers that would like to answer. How are you supporting pregnant and parenting youth and their infants with TAY housing and supports?
Hey, Daniel, I'm going to try to go ahead and answer that. With the youth system, as far as LAHSA funded programs, we're definitely able to connect to the different resources that I spoke about earlier. There are specific like matching resources. It can be like houses that families are matched to, those unfortunately do not exist in the youth system. However, there is a family system that we can collaborate with and make sure that we're referring them and connecting them to a case manager within that system itself. Daniel, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. We have another question. Is there anything we can do to expand foster youth access to higher education? I don't know if Marissa wants to answer that question. I do want to say, though, the Congresswoman also has a bill that works on.
Daniel, if I may interrupt you and just share, Senator Kamala and I introduced the Basic Needs Act, which is geared toward college age students to help them close the gap between, the basic things that they need. Number one, we already have a lot of programs, food programs, housing programs, but how do they locate and how do they access those programs? So that bill helps to create a one-stop shop where our youth can work with their local, either CSU or community college, at identifying where those programs are and accessing them. So, that's one bill that we've introduced this Congress, and I'm sure that we'll introduce obviously in the next Congress. And I look forward to having, Vice President Kamala Harris join me on a hopefully ribbon cutting where we can identify that this bill has been passed and signed into law.
Marissa, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, if I could, just that it's not enough to have the resources available, because what's happening is our are unaware of the resources that are available. And I think Monica or Delilah had mentioned, you actually have to go and take them. You have to introduce them. So it's that village mentality of like, it's not like this is your client, this is my client. It's like, this is our young adult. And as a community member, we all have an obligation to come together and say, how can we wrap around this person? And so it really does take strong community connections so that when somebody does come to your doorstep, you don't turn them away. You say, I know who you should talk to. I know exactly who that is. I just talked to them yesterday, or I'm seeing them next week, and I'm going to take you to them. It really takes, if we're wanting them to succeed both in education and in employment, we're needing to connect them with those specific people.
Thank you, Marissa. So I want to be respectful of everybody else's time, and we're coming up on the hour. Congresswoman, did you have any final words?
I do. I just want to, first of all, take this opportunity to thank our panelists. They're really great young women that care so much about the future of these young people that they're working with every single day. I commend you for the work that you do. It does not go unnoticed. Please know that our community truly admires the work that you do every single day. There's been a couple of things that have been identified for the general public where you too can be a part of the success of a foster youth. And one of those issues is a peer mentor program, joining, if you're a former foster youth, joining one of those programs. But there are also other opportunities. You can engage as much or as little as you want. For example, when I was much younger and raising my 3 sons, it's unfortunate that I did not have a daughter, but I volunteered with the Latina Big Sister program. And that allowed me to participate monthly with a young girl. It gave me an opportunity to pick her up from her home and take her either to the mall or, to some type of activity so that she can see herself, in a grown-up role, right? And have someone to talk to. So, I want to invite the members of our community to look for opportunities where you can make a difference and be a mentor. You don't have to do it every single day. You can, there are so many organizations out there that will accommodate you. But once again, thank you to the County of Los Angeles for recognizing the great talent in all of you today, and thank you for joining us. And Tri-City, I'm still a fan as a former board member. Thank you for all that you do. Take care.
Thank you. Everybody else, have a good day.
Bye.